Welcome, everyone. I am Amber Berry, Vice President of AI and Strategy at Middle States Association. On April 23rd, the White House released the executive order on AI titled Advancing Artificial Intelligence Education for Our American Youth. Middle States President and CEO Christian Talbot captured our point of view in last week's blog post that we have consistently held for 2 years in anticipation of the impact AI can and does have on education and learning. Our guiding principle is human-led and AI-informed in that order. MSA is pleased to present today's panel with experts at all levels and angles of leadership to clarify the federal expectations and opportunities and offer you practical ways to address the executive order. Let's welcome our panelists. Excellent. A highly regarded education technology law leader, Gretchen Shipley guides school districts and other organizations on artificial intelligence, data privacy, school social media management, cybersecurity and safety issues, and on the promotion of cyber citizenship in the school community. As chair of F3 Law's EdTech Practice Group, Gretchen has emerged as a thought leader on cutting-edge topics at the intersection of law and cyberspace. These include the support of hundreds of school districts and county offices of education in the development of AI guidelines and serving as co-counsel for the California School Board Association as a real party in interest in a school board social media case before the U.S. Supreme Court. Welcome, Gretchen. Joel Thompson is a dedicated 15-year educator and the current principal of Mount Lebanon High School, a high-performing suburban public school just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He led his school through the first cohort of MSA's Rail Responsible AI and Learning Endorsement, which focuses on AI literacy, safety, and ethics in K-12 education. Prior to the rise of AI, Joel championed educational technology initiatives such as one-to-one device implementation and district-wide LMS adoption. A strong advocate for leveraging innovation to enhance learning and student engagement, he was recently nominated for the Public School Works Champion Showcase, which recognizes K-12 leaders driving impactful change in their schools. Congratulations and welcome, Joel.
Thanks.
And Peter Nilsson, editor of The Educator's Notebook and founder of edtech company Athena Lab, has over 25 years of experience in education. Recently, he returned from a tenure as head of school at Jordan's King's Academy, following various roles at Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts. He serves on the advisory boards for South by Southwest Education and the Center for Curriculum Redesign, which drive innovation in global education. The recipient of a Wolfram Innovation Award from Wolfram Research for designing a high school course on digital humanities, his work spans humanities, STEM, and the arts, including the creation of a one-act musical about schools now under development as a full-length show. His work in AI emerged from his work in digital humanities, and he is the co-author of a forthcoming book from Solution Tree on AI and education. We also get the chance to work closely with Peter on our Rail advisory team here at MSA. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Amber.
We're going to jump right into this by exploring what the executive order is calling on schools and systems to do. So I'll start with Gretchen. Gretchen, your law firm F3 has been at the forefront of providing guidance to schools about the impact of AI on their work. How do you read what this executive order is calling on schools to do, and what could be some legal implications?
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. So what's really interesting about the executive order, over the past couple years, we've all been navigating school districts being all over the map with whether they were ready to embrace AI in education or whether they were coming from a place of fear and shutting it out. The executive order is a call to action, as you mentioned. It is not something, it's a call to action that school districts need to have some policy and some training in place, because whether or not they affirmatively were promoting it or prohibiting it, it's ubiquitous in everyday interactions, whether it's by staff or students or teachers. So I think it's truly a call to action that policy guardrails need to be put in place. And so as an attorney, my job is to work with school districts, to vet the tools, and there's really specific legal risks that we look out for. And so again, I'm not trying to stand in the way of innovation. What we try to do is help school districts and state associations provide tools so that they can do it responsibly. And there's 4 key risks that I generally share. And the first one, and try to put it in bite-sized pieces. The first one is a really easy piece of professional development thing is simply no PII in OpenAI. And I know that is widely known with this group, but it's sort of like if the glove fits, you must acquit. It's no PII in OpenAI. It's reminding staff, students, your school community that putting personally identifiable information into an open generative AI tool puts their data privacy at risk and it violates their data privacy, because we have many teachers uploading report cards to generate comments, or we have IEPs being drafted through the free version of ChatGPT, which puts their data privacy at risk. That's not to say there aren't terrific platforms out there that are closed enterprise systems that can be used, but it's making that distinction, which leads to my second point. Having a system to vet the software. Every school district already has a vetting protocol to evaluate for data privacy or contract review. The same needs to happen for any AI tool, but I think sometimes it gets missed when there is free tools. Teachers don't think they have to ask permission if there's not a cost associated with it. But as I just explained, there's really big data privacy implications. So making sure that the school system has a software review practice and that it's known throughout the school community so that it can be checked for data privacy provisions. So again, the first one was just data privacy. The second one is having a vetting process. And then the third one, which is unique about open generative AI compared to traditional ed tech, is in some instances, parent permission is going to be required before the tools are used. So quick little legal lesson, as you all probably know, under FERPA, the Federal Education Records Privacy Act, educational records, educational content, in general, the baseline rule is you can't share a student's record without parent permission. But there's a big exception that applies to ed tech tools, such as a student information system. It wouldn't be able to operate if you had to get parent permission for each student. So there's an exception if the data just lies within the software vendor or within the school system. But what's different about these open generative free versions of AI is it's not staying within the vendor. It's being reshared. It's building that large language model, which is great, but it just requires parent permission. So we have to remind school districts that the legal implication is it's a FERPA violation if you're letting them use free version of ChatGPT to create educational records. It's a FERPA violation if you're not doing that with parent permission. And so, that's something I can provide follow-up feedback if you like, is how you characterize the parent permission in a way that's not scary. Educational benefits, we've looked out for safety, things of that nature. Okay, and then the fourth one is the district's duty to monitor tools, especially there's a mental health crisis. There's a lot of tools to provide counseling through mental health. Also, open-ended AI chatbots. I've worked on some of these that are, AI chatbots going to teenagers. What is the district's level of supervision? If it's a tool the district's rolling out to a student, if they are having a threat to self-harm or a threat to the school, there has to be a robust system in place to capture those threats and then adequately respond to them to prevent harm. Because otherwise, from a legal standpoint, yes, I care about kids first and foremost and safety, but also from a legal standpoint, it's a massive legal liability. And I read these 90-page contracts, and a lot of times the software vendor will absolve themselves of any responsibility or liability for failure to catch it. So as a lawyer, I'm like, well, if we're paying you to monitor these, it's also your network monitoring tools. So network monitoring tools, chatbots, also the mental health counseling platforms. It's just, those are increased sensitivity for monitoring for threats. So vet your tools, ensure data privacy, parent permission when needed, and monitoring. And I know that I'm not trying to be a naysayer. These are all things that we have systems in place so you can navigate them, but they're the key ones I really want school districts and to be looking out for, and as state associations, spreading that message.
Gretchen, thank you so much. You really did present that in a way that we can digest and understand. And as you say, each one, it feels like common sense, but you have been steeped in this for a while and you're seeing the results of when schools don't follow these really, really sound practices. So this is excellent and great timing to support schools. Joel, what has this conversation sounded like at the district and school level where you are?
Yeah, I think Gretchen kind of said it best with the call to action. So I think this is seen as a positive in general. This executive order, I mean, there's not a ton of detail right now, a lot of 90 days, 120 days. So really still waiting to understand the full implications or what might be required. But I think in general, it's just seen as a call to action. So, if you're a school that maybe has not really moved in this direction, banned it, something like that, I think that the executive order is making clear that there is going to need to be resource allocation to this initiative. There's going to need to be a prioritization of AI in learning, and that can be very helpful, politically in a community maybe that was, didn't view this as transformational. It kind of gives you a reason to really move in that direction. So I think it's a positive for schools that maybe have not yet moved very far. For schools like ours, similar to middle states, we've really seen this as believe it to be transformational, right? This is a technology that is going to change education. It's going to change most things, but certainly education in the K-12 world. And so, I think for schools like us, it is further encouragement to continue our quest to learn and grow and improve in this area. When we talk about resource allocation, when people are asking questions of why are we putting money to this initiative versus that, this is even more of a reason to show why this is an area that needs to be a priority and a focus. So, from the school perspective, I think it is that call to action. I think the AI challenge is really interesting too. We've taken an approach of purposeful, evaluative, and critical small tests of change with our teachers, which basically trying to get every single person in the organization, teacher, staff member, whoever, to be thinking about how we might be able to use AI to improve the learning experience or the experience of our kids. And I think the challenge kind of speaks to that. It's trying to get as many people with as many ideas out there so that we can scale what works and drop what doesn't work. And so I think there's some interesting pieces to it. But, the one piece that we certainly talk about is funding. So it talks about grants. It talks about the opportunity for grant funding and public and private partnership. But what exactly does that mean? And certainly unfunded mandates can be challenging to deal with. But in this one, I think it is overall a positive because it is saying we are moving in this direction and we need to do it thoughtfully. And I think, too, with educators being a center of the conversation, not just people waiting to be told how to move forward.
Excellent, Joel. Thank you. And I'm so glad you brought up the funding piece of this. That recent RAND report talked about how there's already a great disparity between districts that have funding available to move forward in their AI literacy and engaging in this work and districts that don't. And so this funding being available to all and to those who need it will be critical so that we don't continue to have gaps in the experiences of students and their learning. Let's shift our attention now from these broad implications and legal implications to one of the specific things in the executive order, which is the specific call to AI literacy. Peter, you work with a huge cross-section of schools and you've been a head of school yourself. And every week in Educator's Notebook newsletter, you have a robust section devoted to AI in schools. How do you think about the ways that schools should be developing AI literacy at the institutional level?
Thanks, Amber. It's a great question. And the answer to that, I think, is always evolving in terms of tactics, what that looks like on the ground. But in principle, I really appreciate some language that the MSA uses, actually, which is about building institutional capacity as opposed to trying to build expertise. When we think about building AI literacy at the institutional level, we want to build capacity among people at the administrative level and at the teaching and learning level. And that means experimentation. It means building a culture of experimentation at the institutional level. It means creating space for educators and for administrators to learn and test out new approaches. It means having strong administrative alignment around what the actions are, what schools are trying to to pursue, and ensuring that administrators both at the top and in the middle layers of school leadership are all experimenting and identifying constructive uses for AI in their different spaces. I mean, that's conceptually, I think, how we would want to be thinking about building AI literacy at the institutional level. But I think if we get really practical about that, there are some concrete things that schools can do practically from the ground up. At the ground level, gather a group of innovative teachers and teacher leaders to actively experiment. Build PD into your faculty meeting schedule. Charge department leaders to have regular department level discussions. Make time for it in your academic calendar for those discussions to happen. Then as you move up to the admin level, leadership needs AI literacy as much as the teachers do. Courses and certifications like MSA's Evolution Lab. I promise I wasn't, prompted to promote these things, but these kinds of experiences are necessary for school leaders so the leaders can understand how these tools can be integrated at different levels. But then also in administrative and operational offices. Operational leaders need exposure in places to experiment as well. And all of this really requires clear guardrails, like what Gretchen was describing earlier. AI integration starts with mission as like your North Star as an institution, and then it requires strong policies and safety policies around it to support and ensure that things are practically being done in a responsible way. And then everybody in the community can start to experiment and explore, because again, that experimentation is going to be key. The technology is just, in its toddlerhood right now. We're not even running the marathon yet. We're still at the starting gate for what this is going to look like. And so as we are building a capacity, literacies are not just around how the tools work, but around experimentation. That's what's going to help us continue to build momentum and to continue to build the kind of expertise that we need in schools to answer this moment as not just in our schools, but in the country and in the world as this technology becomes more pervasive.
Thank you, Peter. You mentioned something that's so important to me, and that's AI literacy for absolutely everyone in the community. And it is the business offices, the parents, the students, and the teachers. We lead with students. As Gretchen said, we care about them the most. They're the reason for our being and our operation. And they can't be the only ones who are developing skills, and teachers, classroom teachers can't be the only ones. It has to be all of us. So thank you for that really important reminder. Gretchen, as I noted earlier, you and your firm F3 have been advising schools on this issue for a while now. What are the best schools doing to develop AI literacy and other forms of capacity to navigate this age of increasingly abundant AI?
Well, I think operationally, as Peter mentioned, AI touches all area of district operations, whether it is putting AI in your security cameras or you're doing bus routing through AI. I've seen payroll processing through AI. Those are the business operations. Recognizing that all stakeholder groups need to come to the table as you develop your policy, and then what type of training do you put into place? And when I think of AI literacy, starting from the student standpoint, many school districts may already have digital citizenship curriculum. Mm-hmm. Some states require it. And I think misinformation in AI is everybody could benefit from that. How you recognize when Kate Middleton has 6 fingers instead of 5, just making an awareness campaign about misinformation, because much of it is generated through AI. And that also touches a little bit on the dangers of deep fakes. So I think AI literacy, misinformation can go into digital citizenship, but a big piece of AI literacy, I think, also goes to your teachers. The challenges with accuracy, bias, and equity are all incumbent on staff to make sure that they are simply not just generating lesson plans through, some version of AI that may have, challenges with accuracy, as we all are probably familiar with, but bias. AI is being used a lot to translate documents, which creates a lot of cultural bias. So that's another thing that folks should be cautious about. Another AI literacy piece is all the note-taking tools using AI, and when is that appropriate? What consents and permissions are required in your state? It can vary from state to state, but we have many contentious IEP meetings with parents or confidential, special education meetings where people will surreptitiously bring an AI note taker, maybe not provide the proper notice. So just knowing when it's okay to use AI note taker, what kind of protocol your school district might want to have in place for providing notice and permissions. Other AI literacy, I think I talked about it earlier. One of the most fundamentals, at least from the business standpoint, the business office or the tech office, is being able to identify when the tool is using open generative AI and when it's a closed environment. I mean, that's AI literacy for your business team, is being able to review those terms and conditions and knowing really what data is being collected and how is it being reshared, because that will impact the legal part again. And I think another interesting piece, again, it goes to literacy on an operational standpoint, is the labor duty to bargain, labor negotiations. That's another area where we're seeing teachers come in and saying particular tools are impacting their job duties, and that it may be something that needs to be bargained with a labor union. So that's just another piece. These are things, I know it's I say AI literacy, but it's also just considerations as you go to roll out AI across operations, different piece. But I would say the most core piece for students is the digital citizenship misinformation. And for staff, it's ensuring that it's equitably available, free of bias, free of accuracy, that they still have an obligation to make sure that content aligns with curriculum.
Mm-hmm. You know, Gretchen, the points that you're making there, it's one thing to make sure that everyone has experienced a training, and it's another to really understand that folks understand and can operationalize what they're learning, and that there's some checks and guardrails in place, those really strong policies for understanding, is this closed or open AI, that everyone's asking that question and not just maybe the IT director in the building knowing and understanding these principles. That's different from some of the ed tech tools of the past, where essentially once you got your login, you just did what you wanted. This is an ongoing active practice of being reflective and very careful about the moves we make. So thank you for those. Let's go deeper on the topic of what the very best schools are doing. Joel, you're an early leader in AI at Mount Lebanon Public School District, and you have personally led the high school through Middle State's endorsement, as we said before, AI literacy, safety, and ethics. And now you're engaged in the pilot of the essential learning experience with AI, our second endorsement. What is changing at the school because of this work?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And, Peter kind of mentioned this earlier, and I think, the rail endorsement that you just talked about really was helpful for us because it kind of gave us that North Star. So, what changed is, initially we were kind of disconnected, disjointed, very reactionary in 2022, 2023, just trying to figure out what to do. But using, the Middle States endorsement program, the literacy, ethics, and safety, we were able to start to unify our mission, our vision, and then our practices were able to be aligned to that. So, one of the biggest things we're trying to do is kind of bring AI out of the shadows, so to speak, trying to make sure that it's seen as an opportunity, not just as the cheating tool. I think framing it as a partner in learning, not, just a substitute. So we really are talking about thinking, when students are considering, or when teachers are considering to allow students to use it, what are the skills, the knowledge, and the competencies that students still need? And does the AI do that for them? And if it does, it's probably not an appropriate use. And if it doesn't, or it enhances something, then maybe there is an appropriate use there. So trying to make it seen as a partner in learning, not as kind of the cheating component. Another kind of general change, we're really trying to make sure that our stakeholders are a major part of this, because it's happening so quickly, it is evolving so rapidly, making sure that our PTSA is a part of our conversations and giving feedback and ideas for guidelines that we're rolling out, with communications we're coming with. Our teachers are really empowered to experiment. I talked about that before. So that's really helped us kind of get a lot of different ideas out there quickly, ways of increasing engagement, ways of developing or providing students more feedback. So trying to find some practical ways that are working amongst our staff, and then elevating those conversations. And then our students in generally, kind of what's changing right now is our students are really asking for more. At a meeting with our two of our young ladies who run our AI club, talking about, here's what's happening at the high school with the student body. We want to be a part of how do we make this a tool that we can use, but we can use it safely, and we can use it for appropriate purposes. So working with us as administrators to try and figure out, how do we develop that literacy and increase the access, in a real concrete, practical way. We have, and Peter talked a little bit about this, we have a district team or a high school team that is looking at AI. Teachers are given the 5 teachers that are on it are given time every single day to be thinking about these concepts, to be developing guidelines, communication, helping to elevate the work, that the positive things that we've seen. We have about 20% of our faculty right now doing a differentiated observation track. So their evaluation model is focused on kind of researching AI uses very specific to their use cases, going beyond just what we're asking everybody to do, but doing a much more intentional view and research of AI in their learning areas, and trying to be across the full spectrum, right? We have our AP teachers using it and thinking about it. We have our academic, social studies teachers, but we also have our counselor, one of our counselors doing it, because, AI companions are certainly a cause for opportunity, but certainly a cause for concern too. What are students doing with these tools? How are they interacting? What are they offloading? So really trying to be thinking, having our full staff thinking of their specific areas, how they might be able to support students. We also are piloting a couple tools right now. So we have 2 tools, Brisk and Magic School. And at the end of the year, we're going to do an assessment, get feedback from our teachers as to did this drive great learning? And really that's been the heart of it. We want to know whether or not the strategies supported great learning or didn't. Did that tool help them give feedback quicker? Did it provide a chatbot that was supportive of student learning? So those kind of questions, not just which interface was better for you, but ultimately what helped you drive instruction. And then one of the other big topics in practice that we're doing right now is thinking about process over product. So we've really started to talk about the idea in learning that talking in writing, I can give a specific example. The end paper really was the end all be all is the way we assess student work. But AI really allows that to happen in an instant. And so we need to figure out what skills, knowledge, and competencies do students have, and start to focus, prioritize, incentivize that process over the product. So something I charged our English department was coming up with an actionable proposal about how do we start doing that next year and into the future, so that we, one of the things I said was I don't want to come back next year ready for the next school year and be surprised that AI papers are being turned in, right? I really want to start thinking about how do we start shifting our practices in assessment, in instruction, in feedback, so that we know the skills students have and we know what they don't, and we can support that gap area as we always have throughout the process, rather than just waiting for the end product. So, some other things in the curriculum, a course that states requiring a personal finance course, and we're trying to look at that as a real opportunity. So there's a requirement coming down from the state, but how do we teach personal finance with an application, using AI tools and application? And to use AI tools and application, we need to have that literacy piece. So going to have to spend time in that class, and that's a class every student will have to take. So trying to think about assured experiences as well, to make sure that literacy is occurring across the high school 9 through 12, as well as our conversations that begin K to 12.
A conversation we've had all along with schools, and because our organization is also committed to accreditation, schools are sometimes saying, where does AI fit in? We have so many competing priorities, right? You have a financial literacy expectation, you have a strategic plan to enact, you have other goals that you've been developing over years. And so I love how you are threading this needle of making sure that things can dovetail together, that AI is not a standalone, it's part of most everything we're going to do forward, or we're intentionally not going to, use forward. And so it's just really wise that you're finding ways already to meet needs and solve problems and develop using AI, generative AI, to help you accomplish those goals. So that's fantastic. And Peter, let's come at this maybe from an opposite angle. In your work with schools, where do you see schools struggling or maybe stumbling the most? What are the failure modes that we should be aware of?
Thanks. First, I just want to say I want to be a student at Joel's school.
Right.
We'll work there. One of those two. It sounds amazing. Great question. I think I want to answer that actually by going back to the language of the executive order. When you look at the executive order, it appears to have 2 objectives from the policy section of it. One is maintain the U.S. lead in AI innovation, and 2, prepare an AI-ready workforce. And those are really big high level goals. And then the strategy and calls to action really are 3: train teachers on AI, use AI appropriately for learning, and expose students to AI concepts as early as possible. Those are articulated throughout the document. And then those trickle into 5 specific tactics that are promoted. Create the task force, which should then create a presidential challenge for AI engagement, which should foster also public-private partnerships, support teacher PD, and then support apprenticeships. And all those 5 sort of tactics that are being promoted are all support systems to incentivize the kind of work that's already happening at places like Joel's school, but to really drive and call that to action elsewhere. And it's all built on this assumption that the workforce, again, back to the objectives, maintain US lead in AI innovation and have an AI ready workforce. Those 2 goals are assuming a world that we on this call have already articulated. We see that like AI is going to pervade so much. So how does this trickle back to failure mode? The number 1 failure mode that I see is doing nothing. Is, there are schools that are paralyzed, understandably, because this is a lot to manage right now. And they've written just minuscule skeletal policies, or they haven't really created task forces, or they haven't fostered school-wide conversation. The absence of conversation, the absence of movement is the biggest failure mode that I'm seeing. And people are hungry for it, but they're looking for structures and guidance on how to do it. And I'm not saying on the other side that this means go 100% make everything AI. I really appreciated the language in the executive order that said appropriate use of AI. Use the word appropriate. For how it should be used in schools, which gets back to what Joel was saying earlier about when and why and how we should be using it. But so that failure mode really that I see most of all is not, I shouldn't say not doing enough, but is not doing anything, or I guess not doing enough. We just all need to be experimenting in the context of our mission and vision of our institutions. We need to be experimenting, and we need to be doing something. Maybe that's a better way to put it, to turn the failure mode into a positive. Because if you do something, you'll learn. If you miss the mark, you'll get feedback, you'll adjust, and you'll grow as a school. But the thing to know is that everybody is in this position right now. There's a difference between adoption technologies and arrival technologies. And adoption technologies are ones that have scientific research behind them. We look at the research, we choose as schools what we're going to adopt. But this technology has arrived unbidden. We didn't ask for it, but it's here and we have to respond to it. And so we have to experiment, and everyone, all of us, we have to figure out how this works, or else other forces are going to make those decisions for us. So the failure mode is doing nothing. The success mode is doing something. And the more we can try to do, and the more we'll learn, the sooner we'll find out how this fits appropriately within our context.
Excellent, Peter. You talked about fear, and I've heard that a few times now. At Middle States, we do ask teachers and school leaders regularly, what are your hopes and fears for AI? And they tend to be just 2 sides of one coin. I hope it's used for good and not, for nefarious purposes. And so doing something, becoming AI literate, having the guardrails in place and the understanding of what's safe and what's reckless behavior, all of these sound attainable and not too overwhelming, but clearly done in stages and not all at once. Excellent. I would love to get everyone's input now on some quick response questions. We know that the folks who are listening in and watching really appreciate being able to do something. And so even with all of this great guidance, that's a heavy lift, but where can folks start? So let's just start with a book recommendation. In this moment, what is a book that resonates that you would recommend? And let's go in order. We'll start with Gretchen, and then we'll go to Joel and Peter.
Sure. A book that is in the AI space that I recently enjoyed reading was by an educator named Ethan Mollick. Oh, we all know this book. It's Co-Intelligence Collaborating with It Effectively. And I thought Co-Intelligence Living and Working with AI. Mm-hmm. And it was about how to collaborate with AI effectively. And I thought what was really interesting is it took it from a much broader picture, which is how do you live and work with AI, how it integrates into everything we do, but from an educator's perspective, because I think that's what we've been talking about and what my focus is yes, it's important in the classroom, but it goes into all area of district operations and into our everyday lives. I mentioned security cameras earlier. It is we need to learn how to live and work with AI. So I thought that was a really great resource written by an educator.
Awesome. Thank you. And if someone steals your answer, you're allowed to just double down. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go a little bit of an older book, but Leadership Without Easy Answers by Ronald Heifetz. So Heifetz works really about adaptive challenges. So leading through adaptive challenges, differentiating between adaptive and technical challenges. There's, solutions out there, whether it's a consultant that needs to come in and solve it for you or within your team, there's a clear solution and path. Adaptive challenges are not, right? They're transformational. They get to the culture and the daily practices of your organization that need to shift. It gets to people, which is very challenging. There's no clear answer, and it can be very, very overwhelming to figure out what to do and how to respond. And I think AI is that. It changes rapidly. You can't really look around corners to know what's coming. And I think that book really helps consider, how do you address that? How do you break down an adaptive challenge so that it doesn't feel as overwhelming and you can come up with solutions to begin kind of taking those baby steps, those choppy steps to move to solution.
Excellent.
Fei Li's book, The Worlds I See. It's a great book that brings together the history of AI, how it works, a vision for the future, all wrapped in a very human story. Fei Li, who is at Stanford's human AI, the name eludes me suddenly, but their human-centered AI lab. That's what it is.
Excellent. Thank you. And Peter, knowing you, it was hard to pick just one, but thank you.
Yeah, very true.
Let's shift to a podcast. It could be a series you follow or a particular episode that you felt was really helpful and helped you reflect in this moment.
You want me to go first again?
Do you mind?
Sure. No, I don't mind at all. I have recently become a big fan of Alex Inman, who has a podcast called Learning Through Technology, and this sounds self-serving because I was a guest on his show, but the way they delivered the content in the really high quality AI educators and people, really sophisticated people in this space, I just thought the offerings across the board in their podcast, Learning Through Technology, was really impressive. So Alex Inman's podcast is what I recommend.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Freakonomics Radio. I think it's in general, AI, yes, but I think it's just the way it brings together so many different fields and ways of considering problems. I think in this moment, we need that flexibility and adaptability. Like it's just such a unique time, and the changes are happening in so many different sectors that type of thinking of different ways of bringing ideas together, I think is important way to get your brain moving.
Excellent.
The AI Daily Brief is a podcast that I find very compelling. It's daily, about 15 to 20 minutes. It's about the AI sector generally. That sometimes deals with some of the more technical sides of things, but in terms of the best interpretation of what's happening on a day-to-day basis, I find the analysis very shrewd. And the projections 1 to 2 years in advance have been pretty consistently accurate by the host.
Fantastic. Thank you. And who are you following? Maybe a blogger, an educational thought leader, maybe on LinkedIn or somewhere else. Who do you follow right now?
One person that I recently met, I saw we have the Council for BYU on here, so maybe they know. The state of Utah, Matt Winters from their State Board of Education, they are very far out ahead of helping an entire state build an AI framework. And so I've been following his work because I work with so many states across the country on a big, on a higher level, big scale on how we can implement statewide support, because I see we have many individual schools and school districts on the call, but how can we scale this so all this burden doesn't fall on an individual school district? How can we provide supports at a bigger level? So Matt Winters from the State Board of Education, he's their AI specialist, has done a tremendous job.
Excellent. Thank you.
I really like Amanda Bickerstaff for AI for Education, which I know she's worked with middle states, but I find her, from a practitioner standpoint, I find her to be extremely realistic and on attainable goals, and really understanding what is happening in the classroom and how AI is changing or has the potential to change. So I found her to be, for a practitioner where, I'm going to do this call, but, lunch is running upstairs. I got issues going on, I'm sure, in the lunchroom that I have to deal with. I find her to be someone that when I listen to her, I don't, I need people that push my thinking, but I also feel like this is someone I can listen to and helps move me in concrete ways.
Thank you.
Amber, you know me well. I contained myself to one answer for the first two questions, but I'm gonna explode on this answer. Three different categories of people that I'm following. One is the AI industry generally. The podcast again, AI Daily Brief. Also add Ethan Mollick, whom Gretchen referenced earlier, and also Sinead Bovell, who really gets it. Seen her speak a few times, and she's terrific. For AI practice in schools specifically, I'm going to double down on Joel's response. Amanda Bickerstaff is amazing. She really gets it. Also, Eric Hudson. Yeah. Mark Watkins and Leon Furs are all doing really great work in AI and education. And then for counterpoint and criticism, I think you should never overlook Audrey Waters, who bills herself the Cassandra of EdTech. She was 10, 15 years ago an EdTech believer and advocate, and then quickly saw that many things were happening that were not constructive for learning, and became a force against many of the ways in which EdTech is pushing against the education sector. And I think that voice is really important to have held in counterbalance to all of the advocates.
Awesome.
That's a short list.
You are forgiven. I know this was a challenge.
Thank you.
Okay, the last quick question I want to ask is for all of the educators, the school leaders who are listening and watching and thinking to themselves, okay, I've got a long list of books to read over the summer and I have new podcasts for my commute to school, but what can I do right now? What advice do you have for them? And again, let's start with Gretchen.
One resource that I would point folks to, again, not trying to sound self-serving, there is a ISTE certified course that I was asked to be a part of with AI educators. It is a professional development for staff, for teachers, and it is direct to teachers on how they can be AI certified and AI literate in the classroom. And it's called Navigating Legal and Ethical Boundaries. I tried to drop it in the chat. Not sure if it worked correctly, but I will share it with you, Amber, if you want to push it out to the group, just a flyer about the course. But it's an interactive course that ISTE certified. And then the other piece is one thing you can do right now. So I just want to say this. I go to many EdTech conferences, and my job is to review terms and conditions. And many EdTech companies do not understand student data privacy. They do not have the protections in there, and it's incumbent on the educational institutions to make sure somebody is vetting these. Ideally, it's a lawyer, but not every district has those resources. And so make sure that there is some, I just want to protect your students and protect you all from legal liability is my focus. So making sure that if you have a lawyer and you can utilize that lawyer, that's great. Or find some resources that have checklists and parent permission protocols and things like that I'm always happy to share. We have plenty of free resources I could share with the group.
Excellent. Thank you, Gretchen. A number of members of my team have taken that course, and we have found it incredibly impactful, and we suggest it to our rail schools as just a great way to get grounded. And it's incredibly practical for how to develop that process of how to vet and how to do some good research and be safe in our decisions in the classroom. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, so I'd say going back to a little bit of what Gretchen said at the beginning, the executive order being a call to action, what I would advise people, though, is to pause first, right? If you haven't taken any steps, immediately running to, we got to change everything in the classroom isn't the right first move. I think Peter talked about it, like you've got to really think about your North Star. What is your mission? What is your vision? Take time to process through that as you're, in the culture and the governance layer of your organization, so that when you start making decisions about practice and what's going to change, it's aligned to your values, your mission, your beliefs. And this is really, again, I wasn't asked to say it, but this is the work we were able to, the benefit of being a part of RAIL and the literacy, ethics, and safety endorsement. It really did do that. It slowed us down. But it allowed us to really speed up. And had we not taken that time to think about those things, I think we would be just reactive. And so while this is a call to action, it is a moment we all need to continue to move and start moving, if we haven't, in the direction of AI and learning. I think it's also important to pause and make sure that you are clear on AI's implications and how it aligns to your culture, your mission, your vision. And then the other thing I would say is treat AI as adaptive, right? It is really going to be culture, embedded within your own organization, the solutions that fit your students. And so while you might be waiting for like this guidance that's just going to tell you exactly what to do, it's probably not coming. And so be very, very clear that the ideas within your organization, the things that you're learning through experimentation should be used to move you forward, not just waiting for some other outside body to tell you exactly what to do.
Thank you.
I'll build right on that and just say, from the starting point, try something today. And that means look at what your task list is for the rest of today. Spend 10 minutes, see if any of those things might benefit from a collaborator. And Amber, your question might have been like procedural policy systems wide, but I think the more we individually engage with this supernatural tool, the more the value will become clear, the more the imperative to engage with it structurally and strategically in your school will become clear. So one, try something today with it, whatever it is that you're doing, try it. And then two, talk to people about it. Talk to people about what you tried. Talk to people about how it went. Ask them about what they were doing when they were experimenting with for 10 minutes. To bring it back to Ethan Mollick, he said a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, everybody should try to spend about 10 hours at some point in the coming future engaging with AI. If you spend 10 hours, you will see where its value is and where its shortcomings and limitations are. And last, as a shameless plug, self-promotion, check out theeducatorsnotebook.com. You sign up for the weekly newsletter. There's an AI section every week. I'll be glad to connect with you all about that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And Amber, if I could just, one thing for principals out there, I know this is a really challenging time of year, but if you can take a little bit of time, and if maybe it's one thing, to Peter's point, like one thing you can do to set yourself up to walk into next year in a better position, whether that's getting some people together now who might be able to start thinking about this over the summer, just trying to, in this last month or month plus of school, think about that one thing that you can do that's concrete, that really positions you for next year, to start in a better place than maybe if you just got to the end of summer and showed up next year. So I would just suggest that taking that time to think about that one major thing.
So wise. Thank you for those contributions. We are now going to get our questions from the audience. There are a lot of questions, so I'm going to urge my panelists, keep it crisp, but do the best you can, because some of these are meaty and just really interesting. So for Gretchen, this question came from ACS Athens, our school in Greece. How do we reconcile the need to install guardrails for ethical and humane use of AI with the executive order's main premise of removing barriers in AI?
I think the guardrails are largely the educational component. The guardrails is, the biggest one is know what data is being collected and how it's being reshared. So I worked with a chatbot I mentioned, and it was for here in the United States, we have a student aid application. And that was the intent of the chatbot, was to help high school seniors, 18-year-olds apply for financial aid. So we went, but it was limitless. Students could engage about anything. And so a guardrail was limit what data is being collected, limit what's being reshared. It didn't mean you couldn't use the AI, but there needed to be guardrails. So part of an educator's role is to determine, to protect student data privacy, make sure you understand the scope of what's being collected and how it's being reshared. And it's not that you can't use the tool, it's just you really may need parent permission in order to roll it out. So it could be a great tool. You just talk about the educational benefits, and parents might be signed up, and then you need to make sure it's equitably available as well.
Of course, of course. Joel, what does it look like at the ground level to include stakeholders? You already mentioned the Parents Association you're intentionally bringing into this conversation. We also know that when we invite many different students and parents and faculty around the table, there's sometimes conflict in what folks want or what order or priority. So what are some tactics that school leaders can think about for involving diverse stakeholders?
I mean, I think it's in being intentional in what you're bringing to them, what the purpose of bringing the group around, right? If it's just kind of let's have an open conversation about AI, yeah, you're going to probably get a lot of varying perspectives. But we're typically trying to, either get feedback about a specific document using, systems that are already in place. So we already meet monthly with our PTSA. So that system's already in place. I already meet monthly with a principal advisory council of students. So that system's in place. So using systems that are in place, but then being intentional with what you're asking for at that time. We did a parent night, I think I talked about, where it was intended to be a presentation on where we are currently and where we're headed, with an opportunity for feedback or questions at the end. So I think it's being using existing systems, not creating brand new systems necessarily, that you probably have ways of engaging your stakeholders already, but also being intentional of what feedback you're looking for, what action you're hoping to come out of the exchange. I think that helps narrow the possibility of all that could come from it. It's not perfect, but I think it does help narrow it.
Fantastic. Peter and maybe Joel could weigh in on this one as well. Would you share an interesting use case you've seen with a teacher creating powerful learning experiences through AI? And I recognize that there are some schools of thought that say, let's not get too bogged down in use cases because you're going to limit what someone will explore and try. They might think, oh, well, you just have to achieve this. But just in the spirit of being interested in what this looks like in action, Peter, would you share an example?
Yeah, give me a minute to think about that, to choose one.
Yes.
Joel, if you have one off the top of your head, I'll follow you. I'll follow you first.
I mean, there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind. I mean, one, in a world language, we were always trying to get students to use authentic language and being able to engage with a chatbot to do that through one of the two pilot programs we're running. So it is a K-12 specific tool with the privacy settings. It's not, just a random free internet one, but attempting to have students use German as the language more frequently and in authentic scenarios where there's back and forth with the chatbot. So that's one. I also see increasing engagement. So our honors business law class, creating for mock trials and things, mock trials, creating scenarios and evidence and making the learning more engaging, which is then increasing students' ability to take a stand on the trial, to argue their case, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Joel, do you happen to know the world language tool? I'm a former French teacher, so I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, I think it was a Magic School tool, I believe.
Excellent.
It was either Brisk or Magic School. I can't remember right now.
Yeah.
That they were using.
Really neat.
Thanks for the time. I appreciate that. Thank you, Joel. Looking at some examples that some teachers have submitted in Athena, for example, is where I was looking right now. And one of the use cases that I think is not a specific lesson, but is something that I think is a really crucial use case, is students using AI as a support tutor to help them while they are learning a particular topic, using this as another resource for gaining information. So let's say they're preparing, what's the example here in this particular case? Let's say they're preparing, they're working on rational equations in a math class, and they're looking for something to help explain and understand the concept. They can talk with an AI in a conversational way to ask how to understand that particular concept. They can go back and forth. They say, can you give me another example? Can you, or the teacher can provide a GPT, a custom chatbot that students can use for that particular purpose. So I think this particular use case is not a particular assignment, but is a universal use case or a repeatedly applicable use case for supporting student learning.
Yeah, there was one other one I just thought of that I thought was really cool because it kind of blends literacy and using AI. A teacher was trying to figure out, and I forget the specific math issue, but was asking ChatGPT, what is the biggest areas of error for this particular, solving linear equations, just to give an example. And it came up with 5 examples. Well, the teacher then took that, put it into a formative assessment. And so they went through the lesson to see whether or not essentially ChatGPT was right, because they created their lesson to make sure they were assessing students' ability in that. At the end, they looked at the results, and then he talked to the students about, I used ChatGPT to get the ideas of the frequent misconceptions in this area. Did it align or didn't it? And then, so it was interesting because the kids got an opportunity to see how you might be able to use it. The teacher was able to instruct a lesson that did a good job of getting to the most often misconceptions and being ready to then adjust in that moment. So it was kind of a neat both, where they used it to improve the instruction in the classroom, but also then used it to teach the students, like, hey, this is a way that I've used it. What do you think? How do we think that the tool worked to support my work? So it was an interesting one.
I want to second that use case in the humanities. In English, when I hear teachers talk about writing, is a big question that many teachers have about how do we ensure that that students are doing their own writing. If teachers and students can together in a classroom, on a screen, on a board, develop writing collectively, whether it's generating an idea, building an outline, writing out a paragraph, asking for feedback, any of these stages in the writing process, if they do it collectively, then, as Joel was pointing out in the linear equations class, they're understanding together what AI is good at, what it is not good at. They're learning together, talking about the technology, talking about its limitations, talking about its strengths, and also talking about academic honesty in the process of that. Those kinds of shared experiences of using the technology in the classroom together, I think, are absolutely crucial, both for building the literacy, as Joel suggested, and also for gaining competency within using the technology itself.
Excellent. We could do this all day, and I really like this particular topic, but I would love Gretchen to get the last word on just a conversation of if you could give direction to school leaders and, frankly, speaking selfishly, even as a parent, how should we think about existing tools like Google Workspace that are going to automatically begin to include things like AI, like a Gemini popping in, or Roblox now has generative AI components? Like, how do we keep up with this when it's kind of everywhere and in every tool? What is maybe a process or an approach to this that we could adapt?
Well, I like to say it's not the IT guys' issue anymore. Your IT professionals may be the most knowledgeable about IT within an organization, but it's really about them going from, maybe being a back office trouble ticket type person to leadership within an organization. Make sure that the IT professionals are part of the executive cabinet, are a part of the discussion, and talk about the role of artificial intelligence across all areas of school operations. And from that, that's your core stakeholder group, you build out your policy and your guardrails. But to make sure you're including the stakeholder groups, include parents, they include innovative leader teachers, maybe student representatives, parents who might have concerns, board members, but really decide these guardrails really, for me personally, I think they focus on providing innovation while keeping students safe. And what does that mean, safe? It means typically either data privacy or how to identify misinformation through digital citizenship and curriculum.
Amazing. Thank you. So to narrow this down to 3 takeaways, which is an impossible job, from Gretchen, AI literacy is for absolutely everyone. From Joel, you have to have a North Star. And from Peter, the number one failure mode we could have is to do nothing about AI. You have been a brilliant panel. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amber.